Good morning, everyone. Great to be talking about Public Works this morning. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. We're going to start with a roll call. I'm conflicted to have you in the room, to be honest. You know where the doors are, right? Okay, just to be clear. Okay, well, we've got that done. Let's next talk about declarations of interest. Seeing and hearing none. So we're at 3.1. This is the Works Committee agenda from January the 8th. And seconded by Councilor Marion Pietri. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Now, this is going to be fun. We've got a presentation from Michael Harris, and we're going to be talking about the Ajax Water Supply Plant expansion. And Hamid Khan, thanks.
Good morning. Thank you to Works Committee and the Chair for hosting us today. We're here to introduce to you the Ajax Water Supply Plant expansion and the Harwood Avenue Pumping Station upgrades projects in the town of Ajax. We want to give you an update on the initial status of the project, where we're at today, and where we're heading in the future. We'll get through some introductions. We'll talk about the goals of today's presentation and then get into the details of introducing you to our Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, Oshawa, Curtis water supply systems, as well as the projects themselves. If you don't mind holding questions to the end of the presentation, it would be appreciated. Thank you. So I'm Mike Harris. I'm the manager of the Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Design Division of the Capital Projects Delivery Group of the Works Department. My colleague here is Hamid Khan. He's our project manager charged with leading both of these projects. The goals of the presentation are to review how the Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, Oshawa, Curtis systems are interconnected, to provide an overview of the project details themselves as well. All right, so on the screen, to the left is an area shaded in blue. This covers the city of Pickering as well as the town of Ajax. This is the service area for the existing Ajax water supply plant, which is represented by a black dot on the bottom of the screen. To the right is the service area for the Whitby and Oshawa water supply plants. This includes the town of Whitby, the city of Oshawa, as well as Curtis and the municipality of Clarington. Now the blue dot on the screen is where our Harwood Avenue pumping station is located at the intersection of Harwood Avenue and Roslyn Road in the town of Ajax. It's located at the northeast corner of this intersection. This is a critical facility for the region's operations staff, as it allows operations staff to move water between these two systems through pipes on Roslyn Road in either direction and interconnects these two systems. It provides water security and redundancy and allows our operators to optimize the movement of water from all three water supply plants. I'm going to pass things off to Hamid now, who's going to tell you more about his projects.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mike, for the introduction. Thank you, Works Committee and the Chair for hosting us today. As Mike noted, I'm the project manager for the two projects. I will be providing you a brief overview for both of them. Start with the Ajax Water Supply Plant. I want to bring your attention to the image on the left there. The star over there represents where the Ajax Water Supply Plant is. The blue highlighted area there is the Ajax Water Supply Plant property. It's located near the intersection of Harwood Avenue and Lake Drive. You will notice that our study area is a little bit bigger than our property, and there is a good reason for that. So what we plan on doing is to maximize the area of expansion within our site, but if we have to take a little bit more property, we were doing a study area for the entire strip over there. Now, the study area is owned by TRCA and some areas of the town of Ajax. The image on the right shows a satellite view of the plant. You can see the plant, I've noted there, the plant was constructed from 1995 to 1998. It's around 30 years ago. Going into a little bit of project detail, my project includes the expansion of the existing plant. Our main goal is to double its capacity, and that's by maximizing the capacity of the existing intake. The intake is the pipe in the water that helps bring the water into the plant. As you can see noted on the slide, the existing plant capacity is 163.5 million liters a day. The future plant capacity that we're hoping to achieve is 340 million liters a day, approximately double, a little bit more. A little bit of background on the project award. The project went through an RFP process. RFP was awarded in May of 2024. It was awarded to Jacobs, who partnered with RV Anderson, RVA. In this slide here, I want to give you a little snapshot in time where we are and how we got here. Before I get into the details of where we're going, let me take you back to 1991. In 1991, there was a municipal class environmental assessment completed for the existing plant that was there. As part of the assessment, we built a new plant with the plant you see right now, and it was expanded on the same site. At that time, it was identified that a second expansion was recommended but not needed because community growth had not reached the required levels. Fast forward to today, our community is growing, water demands are increasing, we need to expand the existing plant. But before we do that, we have to complete something called a Municipal Class Environmental Assessment Addendum. Now, the class addendum process is just as thorough as an EA process, and it will review a lot of relevant factors such as future growth, facility conditions, and various environmental impacts. As I noted, this slide is really just a snapshot in time where we are. I do have a detailed schedule later that goes into the details of the actual schedule. Speaking about the Class C addendum process, I wanted to provide a little bit of a brief overview of what we will be doing. Just briefly, there are 5 phases to this process. We are currently in phase 1, call it the information gathering phase. And one of the main objectives that we had for this phase was to issue the Notice of Class E Addendum, study commencement. And this notice was issued on November 5th, 2024 of last year. There are a lot of objectives throughout this process. Some key ones to highlight is to update the forecaster's community growth, update the water demands, as well as identifying potential plant upgrades and their associated impacts. The main goal, really, for us in this process is to identify the best option of expanding the plant while engaging the rights holders, stakeholders, and public throughout. We are working towards the goal, and we're working towards this goal and intend to have a public information center in Q3 of this year to receive public feedback. And we plan on having this PIC with both options as in-person and virtual. So once the EA is complete, we can go into the design phase of the expansion. And really, the main goal here is to expand the plant and enable growth. We also have some sub-objectives for our plant expansion phase. Some of the key ones include building robust infrastructure to withstand the impacts of climate change and ensuring that we engage the community throughout to get their feedback throughout the process. As we get into the design, we will be completing more detailed studies and evaluating and selecting different treatment technologies, which will then lead us to the construction and commissioning of the expanded plant. Let's take a step back here. I want to make everybody familiar with the site. If you haven't been there, I have a view here of the site looking south. You can see the plant building right there. So really, the goal here for me is to show what we're dealing with around the site and the different things we're considering. First and foremost, we have the existing waterfront trail. As we planned, we want to ensure that disturbances to this trail are minimized. We do not anticipate a full closure of this trail, but sections of the trail may be closed with detours provided. Although we don't see the stuff underground, we have existing reservoirs, we have existing filters, so it creates room on the site quite limited. I want to highlight we have existing parkland all around the plant, and we do recognize it's enjoyed by everyone, and any impacts to any of the parkland will be communicated well in advance, and notifications will be provided. I do want to highlight here, we have existing trees that provide a buffer for the plant building there. Through our design process, we do anticipate trees will be removed as the room on the site is very limited. But I do want to highlight any vegetation removals will come with their compensation plans, and we will ensure compensation plans are completed. I do also want to highlight Lake Driveway East is really the only route in and out of the site there. And on the west, we have Harwood, so that essentially becomes our construction route for any construction traffic in and out of the site in the future. We recognize that, and we will ensure that all construction-related activity and disruptions are coordinated and try to minimize any disruptions. Here, the detailed schedule that I spoke about. It's our estimated schedule at this point. A couple things I want to note. The Class EA, the Class E addendum, we are hoping to have it complete by the end of this year. However, it is highly dependent on the feedback that we receive from our rights holders, stakeholders, and the public. So we could anticipate it going into 2026 if there's further studies required. The timing of construction, again, is shown at 2029. A couple points here. It's subject to future regional council approval of funding, and also how our Class E addendum process ends. So if that gets extended, that might move. This brings me to the end of my update about the Ajax expansion project. Let me provide you a brief update for the Harwood Avenue Pumping Station upgrades project. Mike helped us earlier to locate where the station is. This station is located at the intersection of Harwood Avenue and Roslyn Road. It was constructed around 40 years ago, and it's very important to the region because of its ability to move water between the two zones, to the two water system, which is the Ajax Pickering and the Oshawa Whitby water system. It also has the ability to boost water just north to a reservoir called the Westney Road Reservoir. So the pumping station upgrade project, the primary objective is to build a new building north of the site, which will include new pumps, new electrical equipment, communications equipment, and improve access in and out of the site. A few important things I'd like to note here. The existing pumping station building is very limited to accommodate any improvements while keeping it online. And the existing equipment in the station is near the end of its life and needs replacement. The project was awarded with the plant expansion project. Just like I did with Ajax, I want to take a step back and show you the overall site. So the plan is the new station will be located north of the existing station. We are pretty early, so we are doing the background studies to determine the size of the station. We don't have the size right now. We recognize that the entrance in and out is not ideal for vehicle movement in and out of the station, so we'll be looking at making improvements there. And lastly, we do realize the station is located in a core area of Ajax. We have school to the east, school to the north, plaza to the south, residents to the west. So any impacts during construction will be well coordinated in advance to ensure we can minimize any disruptions. I have an estimated schedule here for the Harwood Pumping Station project. We are in the preliminary design phase. we are hoping to complete our design by 2027, and construction is aimed for 2028, pending regional and council approval of the funding. This brings me to the end of my presentation, or our presentation. At this time, we're happy to take any questions and that you have for us. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you very much for the presentation. We do have some questions already,
Yes.
and we'll start with Sterling Lee. Just a second, Sterling. Oh, yeah, we'll go start with Sterling. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair, and thank you, Hamad, for the presentation. Just want to proactively say that the Works team has been great. They engaged the town of Ajax, gave myself, Regional Councillor Crawford, and the local councillor, Henry, a very detailed update, very similar to the presentation we received now. So I guess my question is, the timelines seem to be, and we were all okay with the timelines as advertised. So I guess my first question is, the timelines, have they been updated since we had all had that meeting? I think it was like 1 or 2 months ago. Or are we still on track for the same timelines as previously stated?
Thank you so much to the chair. The timelines are the same since we had our meeting last. We're still in the early stages of our background investigation. So as we get the results of some of those investigations, I will provide another update for the timelines. But so far, the timelines have not changed.
No, and I definitely appreciate it. The only kind of point, and you mentioned it in your presentation as well, Roslyn and Harwood is just a cluster of just a mess in terms of traffic, pedestrian, and road. You said you were going to try and mitigate the impact. I know it's very early in the planning stages. What does mitigation look like? Would we do one side at a time? Like in your view, how would we minimize the construction impact that would have on a pretty major intersection in the town?
So a little bit thanks to the chair. Thank you so much. Thank you for the question. So the impacts that we anticipate for that intersections are really on the north side where there is an entrance in and out. So any mitigation measures would be for that turning lane into the station, if you know what I'm trying to say. So what does mitigation measures look like? Advanced notifications, ensure that there's nothing major going on, there's no school events at the same time, or there's no other construction activities at the same time. So we are well coordinated in that regard, and we're not, my project is closing the lane, somebody's closing the street. So those are some examples of mitigation measures.
Okay. Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, both streets are scheduled for expansion over the next few years. So our only ask is that you stay in touch with our town planners to ensure as least disruption for residents as possible. But again, thank you so much to the Works team for being really upfront about this and really walking through the town side on all the procedures. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, next we've got Councilor Mulcahy. Thanks.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. So this is coming on the heels of the Whitby plant expansion. So we must have some synergies and some lessons learned that we're, ahead of the curve on with, detouring the waterfront trail and everything else. So I guess my question is around some of the secondary objectives you listed, and there's additional studies and whatnot. How far do we need to go? We kind of know a lot already from previously doing it, what the impacts are for climate change, resiliency, energy efficiency, all that sort of stuff. So we should know a lot of that before we even get into the nitty-gritty on this. So I'm just hoping you can rest assured the rest of us that we're not going to redo everything at an expensive cost.
No, thank you so much. Thank you for the question through the chair. You bring out a very excellent point. And yes, we are looking at all that we've done for Whitby, but we do have to recognize the site conditions at Whitby were very different than the site condition at Ajax. The space is always so some technologies and some research that we've done could apply to Whitby, may not apply to Ajax. So, but having said that, no, the goal really is learn from what we have, what we've already done, see how it can be applicable to what we're doing, and make sure they're synergizing between the two projects. And yes, a lot of homework has been done at Whitby. Our plan is definitely to bring all of that information back to Ajax and ensure that we can make Mike, do you want to add anything?
Yeah. Through the chair, yes. I'd also like to add, Hamad is actually our project manager for the Whitby project as well. So he's very invested in both of these projects. So the consistency and approaches between the two projects, looking for efficiencies, is what Hamad's tasked with, and he's very good at that. So the projects are in great hands.
Wonderful, thank you. And one further follow-up. You mentioned that you'll be removing some of the trees as some of the, and that's obviously a visual barrier. Will there be an opportunity to replant once it's complete and landscaping will be done as well?
Yes, thank you so much for the question through the chair. Yes, we will have compensation plans that determine whatever the types of trees we remove, what the compensations are required for that kind of tree, and of course, we will plant trees and any vegetation that we need to do.
Great to hear, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next we've got Chair Henry.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple quick questions. This is a tight site, so staging of equipment will be important, but you won't be able to stage it adjacent to the plant. Have you got a plan to stage it somewhere close by?
Thank you for the question through the chair. So when you just follow up, when you say staging, as in site construction laydown area, stuff like that, that's what you mean? Materials?
Equipment, yes.
At this time, we are very early in the planning stages. I do not have an answer where it is. So we are looking at how much, it depends on how big we want to make it, where we want to put things. So that will determine how we stage it.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that there needs to be an appropriate staging plan and shared with the town of Ajax. The other one is,
Thank you.
And I am guilty of this because I am a tradesperson. Tradespeople do not like to walk very far to a job site. So in the tender, there is a parking lot around the corner that the municipality has. Can we put within our contract that all trades will have to not park and take up public space for the waterfront?
No, thank you so much to the chair. That is an excellent point. I have taken into consideration. For sure, we will ensure that any disruptions and any things of that nature are identified in the contract, and we ensure that the disruptions on around that trail and that area are minimized to the best we can. And this feedback is great. This is exactly what I'm looking for, feedback like that.
And the last part, and I apologize this because we're in a very different world this week than we were last week. Are there Canadian companies that make the pumps that we will need?
Good question. Thank you so much. Again, I have to go back and see what Canadian companies there are. On the top of my head, I personally don't know. I don't know if, Mike, you know of any? I don't think so.
Yeah, so through the chair, the types of equipment and technologies that are identified to be needed for the plant expansion, the pumping station expansion, are something that we'll need to gauge where the market's at and where the equipment can be sourced from to meet the needs of the expansion. So it's something on our minds as well. We don't have an answer for you today, but it's something that is being considered as the design moves forward.
As the chair of the region, like my colleagues, we're all deeply concerned about how 25% will affect our ability to provide the needs to our residents. And, you know, I'm a firm believer if there was a time to shop local or shop Canadian, that time is now. Chair, thank you. That's my mini rant.
Hey, thank you very much. Before we go to Marilyn, just a couple from me. Can you talk about how these changes with our water supply plants will make us stronger when it comes to emergencies? You know, we all watched what happened in California. When you open multiple hydrants, how much more water will we have in a case of emergency with a situation like this?
So thank you so much for the question. That's a very wide-ranging question. So we have to look at the system as a whole. There is the water supply plants and we have reservoirs. So as part of our planning, we are always looking at what resiliency is there in the system. And some of the ones I pointed out, for example, Harwood Avenue is a good example there. We have the ability to move water. So not just the plant expansion will help us be more resilient in terms of providing security of service for long term. We have other sites that we can utilize in case of those emergencies. So in most of our planning of our expansion, we are always looking at it's really where it starts. If there's a fire along with a winter storm, how much water do we have? How much water do we need on top of the demands that we have? So, just some examples. I mean, I can go into a lot of technical detail, but just to reassure you that we do look at all sorts of avenues available to us to provide water to whoever's needed in an emergency.
Okay.
Okay.
But there's limitations, right?
Yes. Yes. Of
There's
course.
not always unlimited water everywhere we need it.
Yes, of course, but there are factors built into our planning that mitigate some of the time required to get water to people. So yes, I mean, if the emergency lasts for 6 months, of course, we're gonna have issues, right? So
Okay. Hey,
Hope that answers
thanks
the
for that.
question.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
The next one, I also sit on the TRCA board, and I know they're very interested in these projects
Yes.
and partnering with the region of Durham to make sure that when you're doing work, they can step up with maybe some grants. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. No, thank you so much to the chair. I am meeting with we are meeting with TRCA. I have regular meetings with TRCA to keep them updated. I mean, you can see the land around the site is all TRCA. I'm well aware of their SNAP program as well, which brings in the town of Ajax. So I'm part of that as well, just to make sure that we're well coordinated with anything that we do. There are really our partners in this to ensure that we can deliver an effective project. So 100%, yes, I am regularly talking with the TRCA.
Okay, perfect. Well, next we've got Councillor Crawford. Thanks, Marilyn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me as a guest. Thank you very much. I know your team both came out to talk to the Ward 2 and the Ward 3 councillors, and I think this is the fourth time I've seen this presentation, so no surprises here. A couple things that I wanted to ask, and I don't know if you're able to answer me, but is any of this project covered under DCs?
Thank you so much. I believe the project is covered by DC funding.
Okay, because that's always going to be a question when it comes to our residents, one particular. And the other one is when it comes to construction, I don't know why it never dawned on me before, but on lake driveways, it's very tight. And the construction vehicles, it's the only access they have. So that, I can't tell you how much that sends a shock, a wave of fear through my heart, because it's just, I know that the area down there is less traveled because it's a dead end. But would you be storing at the dead end?
Thank you for the question through the chair. Really, we're really early right
Yeah,
now.
I know,
Again,
I know.
Back to his question, there is we need to determine how much we need to store
Yeah.
as part of our thing. So once I have more information, does it look like a trailer? Does it look like a small little box? So and what can I accommodate on site? How we stage the construction on site? That the goal really is less disruption. My goal is less disruption. So I will try my best to stage the project in a way that, if you can build something on site, we'll do it. But again, it will be well communicated. If I can't do it, then I'll have to come up with a plan with the team that, okay, this is all that we tried to do and this is all that we can do, We recognize the space is very limited and the in and out of the site is that one route.
Yeah.
So, and it's heavily used.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I guess either end of, I know this is critical work that has to get done, so that's not the question here, but either end of these projects is going to be disruptive. It doesn't matter how you look at it, whether it's road closures or construction on local roads, it's going to be problematic. And not only you will have to mitigate that, we're going to have to also do that. So that's just what we're just trying, and I realize it's early. But there was one other question I had. When you were talking about public information's meetings, are you going to come to council and at least do an informative, like that's your best opportunity to get the most bang for your buck, right? Because you've got all of council and then you'll have got all the viewers on top of that. Rather than trying to do something outside of that framework, I just wonder if that's a better option for you. And also, I know you've already done one flyer, I think, out to the south end, correct? And when you look at, I can't pull it up on my computer because I guess the Durham server's down, but when you look at the dotted lines, I know we talked about it, the dotted lines around the site, we need to be really careful that people don't take the dotted lines as the expansion lines. I know we talked about it, and I know you don't know how far you got to go, but when the people see that kind of perimeter, questions will be asked. So that's all I would. And are you going to be sending out another flyer?
Yeah, thank you so much to the chair. Yes, excellent points. I do appreciate all feedback, and the PIC is really something we have to do as part of the EA addendum process. But I'm like you. What makes my life easier is if I can have more opportunities to talk to counselors and then give you more input. So yes, of course, for sure, that's part of my task. And notification, yes, of course. We did speak a little bit about the study area, and I tried to highlight it on the flyer that this is a study area and this is not the plant expansion area. And to your other point about more flyers, as part of our process, as we get more studies done, as we complete more of the thing, I do plan on sending more notifications. We do send more notifications online. So if you go on our X page or our website, there are notifications about the project informing people, because really I want the feedback. I appreciate the feedback. Like, I love the conversation here because it helps me plan better, and there are no surprises. So yes, I have a schedule for when things will go out, and they're all tied to the studies that we're doing, because I don't want to send the same flyer out. I want to provide more information, so people don't consider that, oh, it's the same thing, So yes, I really do appreciate the feedback.
So the bottom line is yes. And how much disruption will happen during this EA process at all? Do you know?
Sorry, to the chair, disruption as in
Will people notice it?
the only disruption will be on our site, so nothing outside the site, and that's only because we're doing investigative studies on the site to determine the conditions of the site.
Okay, I appreciate all the communication.
Thank
In our world, you can never over communicate, and you can send 1,000 flyers out, and it'll still be brand new to somebody else. So it's like, as long as we keep talking about it, as long as we're informed, we're going to be the conduit to all the answers, right? So as long as we know what we're doing, then it's all good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And just to add to that, the moment I know something, you'll know something. That's my
That's
goal.
always a good plan. Thank you.
Okay, next we've got Tito. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I just wanted to ask about the longevity of the project, because I think the sensitivity to the impacts in the interim for the ward councillors and for the community that's involved are tangible and real. So if they're going to have, and we are as a region going to invest this in the expansion, what sort of longevity can we expect from the actual expansion? Are we at full capacity at that point, or is there another phase? If you could just expand on that.
Mike, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So through the chair, just to clarify your question, longevity of construction or the end product of the improved?
The capacity of the product.
Okay, so our program is designed to meet the needs of growth within the region. So the exact horizon of the population demand that will benefit from the increased capacity of the plant, that's part of the EA process to look at population projections and to identify how far into the future this capacity is expected to accommodate growth within all of our service areas.
Would it also, look at non-traditional industries and versus traditional industries? And the reason why I ask is because we've had some issue with facilitating industry in our community as a result of water capacity not being there. So the last thing I'd want through you, Mr. Chair, or maybe it was there and it wasn't released, but the point is, the last thing we want is to have a community disrupted and the region invest in something that's undersized or doesn't meet the reality of what the growth will be, because we've seen all of our targets either shattered or very close to being, shattered in the sense that, I think that wouldn't have been predicted things change in time. So I'm just wondering what variables the EA is looking at in order to ensure that we're not into another phase, another investment when costs will probably be rationalized with the synergy of expanding in full capacity now, just for the taxpayer and for our own investment retention purposes.
Yep. So through the chair, the benefit of our systems, as we touched on earlier in the presentation, is that they are interconnected. So we also have an expansion planned at the Whitby plant as well, which is adding capacity to the system. So when new and emerging demands come up, like let's say an industrial water user would like to be a customer within the region through our partners in our planning division, we would look at what capacity was available, and if need be, look to engineer a solution that would accommodate that, or to identify what the solution might be moving forward. But what we can evaluate now as part of the project is what we know today.
Okay, and I appreciate the opportunity to ask these questions because they're more impositions than questions. I apologize, but I think we need to get there through you, Mr. Chair, to what we know today. I think we can also foresee that industry changes, and I think it would be a shame for us to forego Canadian industry because we're competing at a global level for the sake of not having oversized or provided the capacity that I believe is important now that we're investing, because things cost more. If we have to expand in the future again, it's another cost. So I'm hopeful that the EA will inform that process and not just look at today, but look at tomorrow, and not here, just here, but also the Oshawa Whitby expansion that you're suggesting as well. So thank you, and keep up the good work.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming in. Thanks for your knowledge. Thanks for working so closely with Ajax and all the other municipalities. These things are critical, and we appreciate how hard you're all working on this. So keep going.
Thank you so much. Thank you
No
for
problem.
having us. Thank you for the questions. Really appreciate all the feedback. Taking it back, and thanks for the opportunity. All right.
Okay. All right. So next, should we receive that report? Okay, we don't have to. Good. Okay, no problem. So let's move on to 7.2. This is report number 2025 WR1, and it's for the Energy from Waste Advisory Committee. Did you put your hand up? Oh, actually, but you didn't officially do it, so we're going to go to Councillor Nicholson first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple of questions on procedure. I read in the report, it says in the recommendation that these 5 nominees were chosen by the Works Committee. Was there a Works Committee that I wasn't invited to that vetted these things and went through this process, or is that report in error?
Sure. Let's get a mover and a seconder for that. So moved by Councillor McCaughey, seconded by Mayor Foster. And Andrew, can you take that one?
Yeah, sorry, could you just provide me a paragraph number for that?
So the question was around the process. Councillor Nicholson doesn't remember being part of a meeting, but I think it's because it was done by staff.
Yeah, so the recommendations are put forward by staff to this committee.
Okay. Does that
All
answer your
right,
question?
so yeah, it answers the question that the report's in error. Staff make this recommendation. We may ratify it and send it forward through to council for final approval, but the report says that we chose the parties. And that's the part I want to clarify. This committee had no role in choosing any of the individuals other than this motion to ratify and send to council. Is that correct?
So, Andrew, do you want to just walk us through the process on how we got here?
So certainly, so this does follow the same process for really any regional committee. So legislative services may have something to add to this, but we receive applicants. They are reviewed by staff. Staff makes the recommendation to committee here. Committee essentially, yes, would choose to ratify or not ratify that selection and put that to council for further ratification.
And then just so you know, Councillor Nicholson, in this case, there was 8 people applied.
Correct.
1 didn't qualify. We chose 5 out of those 7 that qualified.
Yeah, per the terms of reference with the host community agreement with Clarington.
All right, let me continue on with the clarification here. I've just found out some new information that's not in the report. The report said 5 people applied. Now are you telling me 8 people applied and 1 wasn't qualified? If this committee is making the decision on what to send through to council, why didn't we get to see all 8 applicants and their resume analysis?
Do you want to take that, Andrew, or do you want to take that, Ramesh, or do you want to go to a clerk?
No, let me start through the chair. Yeah, first of all, I do want to apologize for a couple of quality control issues. Section 5.3 should have said the region received 8 applications, and that's something I was waiting for an opportunity. And I also have a QC correction in the next report, which we'll get to that. Other than that, like the process has always been, this is what, term 7 of this committee. It's always been staff reviewing the applications outside Clarington. Clarington happens in Clarington, and we get up to 5 members. Staff make the recommendation. I don't think we've ever, in the previous reports, included the non-selected applicants in the attachment. But if that's the direction, we certainly can. So it's just perhaps a procedure that we have followed forever, like not something that can be improved.
Yeah, just so everyone understands, my concern is not with the appointment, and the candidates do seem qualified for the position. But this is a public document. This goes in the minutes of the committee meeting, and it's sent through to council. It should represent the process accurately. It says very clearly at 3 different points in the report that these selections were made by the Works Committee. And now we've understood that past practice has not been that case, and that the applications, in fact, are vetted and recommended by the staff. My concern is, should not the report then be amended to reflect that and to not indicate that these were chosen by the Works Committee?
So, Councillor Nicholson, would you like to amend the report? So amend the recommendations in the report.
Well, I just think the reference to being selected from the Works Committee should be removed at all points in the report, because that's just not true.
So would you want to make that amendment?
If I have to move an amendment to delete not true items, then I guess I will.
Okay, so can you reword can you tell me what amendment you'd like to make, sir?
To remove the references that say that these applicants were selected by the Works Committee.
Okay, just a moment. Okay, do you want to just jump in with that, is?
So just through the chair, we could amend the actual recommendations if you'd like. So in recommendation A, the words selected by members of the Works Committee could be deleted so that it just says that the following 5 applicants be appointed for membership, and then the Works Committee would approve or not that part of it.
We would
If
need a
that
second
makes,
for that, right?
yes, if that helps with the clarification.
Do you
But
want
the process is as it has been before.
do you
That
want
would
to
be that would be sufficient. That would be sufficient for me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's see if someone will second that. Okay, seconded by the vice chair. Any questions or comments on the amendment? Mayor Foster? Is this about the amendment? Yes. Okay, sounds good. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chair, thank you. Andrew, thank you. So the clarity that you gave me one-on-one in terms of the number of applicants, quick, easy, transparent, and so that mistake was caught earlier. On the amendment itself, I'm happy to support the amendment, but the reality is, as the report is written, we are choosing. We could opt to not support the names put forward. That's our prerogative. That is council's prerogative. It goes to council. So the semantics, playing with the words is fine. I'll support it. But at the end of the day, we're putting our hands up as we're supposed to, or not as we're supposed to. So I thank staff for that. And I'm not sure that I can accept the criticism on that piece of the report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, no problem. Anyone want to record it? Is this going to be unanimous, or do we want to record a vote on this?
What? Hold on a second.
Okay, and then there's some background noise here, I think. Okay, so all in favor? Recorded vote? Oh, recorded vote. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Okay. All right, so that's carried. Thank you very much. All right, so next item. Oh, so on the report as amended, motion? Okay, so all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. All right, let's jump to 8.2. This is report number 2025 W4, and it's for the sole source procurement. And there's going to be a change here. Ramesh, do you want to make it?
Through the chair again, not the best of my days having to do a QC correction on both reports. Again, section 5.4 in W-4, the last number where it says 4.386 million, it should be 5.344 million. So 5344000. It is just an error, like it's taken a number from the wrong table. Well, different table from the wrong column. So please, like for the record, although it's not in the recommendation, 4386000 should be 5344000. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, what would we like to do with this, folks? I don't see any hands at the moment. Can I get a mover and a seconder to get on the floor? Vice Chair and Councillor Mackay. Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, Mayor Foster, go ahead, sir.
You didn't really expect me to join this committee and stay quiet. You know, just through you, Mr. Chair, to Ramesh. Ramesh, we had a quick chat, but my concern with this, and I've talked with a couple of staff members, is we have numbers. I'm always surprised that we go out for tender and tell everyone exactly what the budget is. There's no way around that. I get it. In a competitive world, I'm not sure how helpful that is. But can you speak to the checks and balances where we're doing the sole source that we know we are not being taken to the cleaners? And sometimes we will be, that's just life, but can help me with the checks and balances in the system to make sure that we're getting fair value.
Yeah, through the chair, we do have two specific means to make sure that we are not being gouged, I guess. Most of these companies, like we've had a long relationship and we know the prices from the previous times we bought from them. So like, we look for escalations that are meaningful. And we do have most of these suppliers are also supplying for, folks in York region. So we have those benchmarks as well. To me, those are the two main means by which we make sure that, we are within the ballpark.
Is it fair to assume that there's a bit of a lock on the market broadly for a lot of this stuff? And I can only think of one name, the water meter issue. You could go with a company called Neptune, I forget the other company, but it was A or B and that was the end of it. And is that similar to this where there's probably very little competition anyway?
It's either that or like most of these equipment are so customized to where they are. If you buy a totally different product, you have to do more civil works, electrical, mechanical, much more disruptive. And it's common for most of these legacy plants to get stuck, I guess. So we have to do our due diligence to make sure, especially if there's another competition, we may have to pivot to something, but this has served as well, and that's the recommendation.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, thank you.
No problem. Next, we've got Chair Henry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. One is, and I'll just put it on the floor. I think because we talked about the Ajax water station, it would be important for this committee to tour that facility, to see from the inside as we did up in Brock a little while ago. That's one, so I'll leave that with you to whether you want it as a motion or direction. And the other part too is, from my touring, the day we spent in the northern part of the region, I was surprised how much I learned, and that when you tender a facility, when you build a facility, you actually build the pad for the pumps is built to the specification of a pump. And often, being able to change that pump, while you would think it would be easy, not all pump bases are the exact same size. So sometimes in order to change a pump, it means actually destroying the base that the pump sits on to put a new base in so that the holes for bolting down the pump or any other piece of equipment actually match. And that's one of the challenges that I remember from the time spent. So I understand the reason for sole sourcing, but I think I personally would enjoy a tour, excuse me, of the Ajax water plant, just so we can see what it is and then get our head around where we want to go with that plant. And I think the best way to do that is actually to see it.
Yeah, so let's, right after we pass this report, let's do one more motion suggesting that we do that. But Chair, I agree 100%. I learned an awful lot just by being in the room and chatting with the people that are working on it day in, day out. You learn very quickly that, we could switch this, we can switch this pump or this sensor or whatever, but then we have to change the entire room.
But I think it's significant with every major works project. In order for us to understand that, for example, I'll give you another really good example, is the Beaver River Bridge project in Beaverton. To actually have the opportunity to see what is being done there is a good thing. Us, after all, we are that the approving body for all this work, and staff are doing a great job. But sometimes it's hard to understand it if you don't see it. And I think going forward, I think it would be any project of a significant dollar value in going through this committee, we should set that as a permanent policy.
Again, I agree 100%. When we did our culvert project in downtown Uxbridge, I had the opportunity to visit that site almost every day, mostly when the workers weren't there, so I could really understand how invasive it was and how big it was. And you learn an awful lot by sort of looking down into the hole and then chatting with some of the workers. So
One of the first
I agree
projects
100%.
we worked on together, yes.
Yeah, that was I still have a fair bit of
Still
trauma
waiting
from
for the
that
street
one.
lighting, yeah.
Anyway, so let's go to Councillor McDougall, and then we'll go on from there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me as a guest today to this engineers meeting, and others. Just to follow up on Mayor Foster's questions in terms of sole sourcing, one of the questions I wanted to ask was, I mean, obviously we're sole sourcing. Are we attempting to sole source from Canadian companies as much as possible?
Yeah, and this, through the chair, this is something we have looked at as to how dependent are we on US-based equipment. And as a rough number, staff have come up with a number that's 70 to 80% of what we source in terms of equipment, pumps, chemicals, and so on, in some form or shape, are originating in the US. Obviously, there's a lot of Canadian distributors, which I guess makes it Canadian, but it really is US origin. Certainly, that's the nature of the business, and we don't see that changing overnight. But are we specifically looking for products made in Canada and so on? Notwithstanding whatever gets approved today, there is a conversation that's happening at the CEO's level with finance and so on. I'm assuming at some point you may get a report on where we go on that, subject to what happens 30 days from now, or I think 28 days from now. It's an active conversation.
Certainly. So I'm not just thinking in terms of how much are we purchasing from the U.S. I'm just thinking overall, how much, are we attempting not to lock others out of our markets, but are we attempting to support our own trades and industries in Canada?
Do you want to talk about Trojan? Just as a Canadian company that's leading edge in this, or no?
Yeah, I'll probably. Sorry, through the chair, if I can refer to Jason Hunt, there are some restrictions on what we can and what we can't as of now. And I know it's an ongoing conversation. Are you able to add anything to this, Jason, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And Ramesh is correct. the question being asked by the councillor is also a question being addressed by senior staff, and the legal's participating in a review of our risk and exposure to the U.S. market across all of the purchasing we do. But we do have, and this council's heard this before many times, we have obligations under trade agreements. Those trade agreements are somewhat complex, and in fact, for example, there's quite a big difference between the trade agreement we have with the European Union and the trade agreement we have with the U.S. and Mexico. And those are two completely separate agreements with separate and in some cases different sets of obligations. So we do generally, I think the approach that we need to sort of bear in mind for now is that the principle, and in some cases the obligation of our purchasing, is to provide an open purchasing process which allows all competitors equal access to government contracts which are publicly funded by taxpayer dollars. And one of the tenets of that is to provide the lowest cost of projects and goods and services for taxpayers. So that's the current principle we're operating under. Whether that's changed since Sunday, certainly the province is a big driver of that policy, as well as that legislative requirement for municipalities. So they obviously are the single biggest factor in providing that direction to municipalities. So that can certainly change. But the other aspect of that is also those international obligations, some of which we are directly bound by, others of which we look to the province as to what our role and requirements are. So sorry for the long answer, but this is a question that's under active consideration by senior staff.
Just to follow up, if you don't mind, when something happens like the President of the United States, declaring a 25% tariff, don't all those agreements basically end? Aren't they voided with that type of action?
I could certainly provide a better answer to that in closed session, because it obviously involves an interpretation of the treaty, which is in effect a contract. So that legal advice would be something that council would be entitled to, and certainly would be entitled to have that given to you in a closed session. What I will say that, from the perspective of legal information and not, giving away any secrets, the parties to those agreements are typically the federal government, and in almost any contract, it's the party to the agreement that makes a decision about whether or not it's been breached. So I may have an opinion about whether or not the Canada, U.S. and Mexico trade agreement has been breached by the U.S., but it would be the federal government in most cases that would make a decision about whether or not that agreement had been breached and what the consequences of that was. As well, in the particular case of that agreement, it would then be probably for the province to weigh in as to how municipalities were to respond in the case of that breach.
Okay. Hey, thank you very much. Go to our vice chair.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just through you, mine's, I believe, a legal question. When we consider that report, oftentimes we see the word sole sourcing. So that's something through you to our solicitor that's legislated, and I'll just give you some reasoning as to why I'm asking, because it sort of signals that, we're sort of throwing in the towel and we only went to one person, and the average person, the taxpayer, thinks, well, why didn't you go to other people? Why didn't you go to other companies? And I think we need to start looking at the terminology that we use. And it would be much more effective and reasonable if we just said, we are purchasing from this company. Because it's through you to the solicitor. Would it not be foregone conclusion that you've followed, the criteria of procurement? You've gone through the process to see if there's a competitive sort of alternative, whether it's Canadian, which we hope it always is, or international. This is the product that we're purchasing, because I fundamentally believe that it is, as transparent as it may be, it's also something that puts us in a position of having to explain something that some people, for whatever reason, consider it inexplicable. But the fact of the matter is, there is no alternative. And if you look, as Chair Henry indicated, and you go to some of these projects and you look, say, a particular component, there may be one company that builds this component. And as much as we want, another 5 companies to build it, they don't. So we would, I just want it through you to legal, see whether or not, while we're visiting some of these trade policies and the effects of the local dynamics versus an international sort of play, whether we can look at the language that we put into reports, because I don't believe that the language needs to be there anymore. We need to evolve in the language and the reporting that we provide because it's antiquated and I think archaic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see who wants to, does anyone want to respond to that? Go ahead.
I think the councillor is correct to state that when the region does make a sole source decision, there is a robust process that happens at the staff level before that recommendation is made. I personally participate in that process on many occasions, and a big part of that process, which is right in the purchasing bylaw, is an assessment of whether or not there is a competitive aspect of the decision anyway. So for instance, there may have been a recent competition in that area and we already know who the low-cost provider is. Or there are other factors which lead us to be able to recommend that this is in fact the lowest cost solution. So cost to the taxpayer is still the biggest factor in a sole source decision. There are other considerations that people see in there like time and things like that. But in my experience and certainly the application of the policy, it's still cost that's the driver of a sole source recommendation in almost every case. It's very rare that time or something like that would be the main driver. And even where time is the main driver, cost is still a major consideration.
Did that adequately answer your question? Sorry about that. Go ahead.
It does, and I think the other part of it is, and I suspect from the answer that we're looking at modernizing the way we report and whatever legalities or legislative requirements we have. If it's not legislated that we need to identify that it's a sole source, I would suggest that we look at that very closely because I've looked at our reports and there is a sole source, terminology on a number of them. Each and every single meeting. If someone's looking at it from a lay person's perspective, they're going to think you have favorites. You're just giving it to one company. As the solicitor indicated, and I think reality would state, we have to go on the basis of facts. It's not the case. This is just a terminology that inflicts pain on, I think, an organization that goes through a process that's not only robust but legislated. And I think that we have to be very careful. We've had terms and reports modernized in the past. I think this may be a time for us to take a look at that.
Yeah, and again, thanks a lot. I agree with that completely. We've done a lot of that in Uxbridge already, where we just using different terminology or changing our policies completely. But again, if I need to replace the engine or transmission in my truck, it's going to be sole source to the manufacturer. Right, it's not that's not my only option, but you have very few options at that point. You get a rebuilt or a new one, but you don't have 50 different options. And for us to vote on something where we really only have one option, I don't love that. I love that when we come in here, we actually make decisions, not just pass rubber stamp decisions that have basically already been made. It's not a great use of our time, and I think the optics are bad. So I agree with you. Okay, let's go to Councillor McDougall. Oh, you lowered your hand. Let's try this again. You had a point that was interesting earlier before the meeting. Do you want to just repeat that? It's not often I ask you to speak.
Certainly, thank you. I did have more than one question, but I realize now that I might only get one question, so I just need to clarify, because if that's the case, then I'll ask my most important question, Mr. Chair.
I think I'm afraid to say this, but why don't you just go ahead and we'll cut you off when we need to.
Okay, thank you. So a question I had actually, just to follow up on what the Vice Chair had stated and our solicitor as well. In terms of sole sourcing, if we have a specific product, or let's say a specific part that fits a specific pump, let's say an O-ring or a gasket or a who knows what or an impeller. If we go out to a competitive bid on such a part and there's only one of those that will fit a specific product, would we be forced then, if we tendered that, to then take the lowest bid at whatever the bid is? Through you, Mr. Chair? I.e., the price can be whatever the vendor wants to put on the price, on the product, and we will be forced to choose the lowest bid, which is that one.
You take that.
Yeah, through the chair. For example, just because this report gets approved, it doesn't mean like we have no choice but to go with these companies. Through the negotiations, if we think like they're not being reasonable in terms of price gouging and so on, we will go through the alternative. This is like not automatic, right?
So that's exactly my point, is by going through a sole source process, you're able to negotiate. If you put this out to a tender process, the tender's not option, it's not an option to negotiate that tender.
Fair point, yeah. You have no choice but to go with the lowest bidder unless they are non-compliant with the specifications.
And your other option would be to rip out the pump base, the pump and everything else and
Exactly.
redo the whole thing.
Yeah.
So in essence, the sole, if I might, in essence, the sole source is actually going to be your cheapest option, not even negating the fact that you don't have to produce a whole set of tender documents, drawings, et cetera, to tender it in the first place.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, thank you. And then I did have another question, which is just in terms of committees and who does what, when, where sort of thing. This report is somewhat of a financial nature, and sitting on Finance Committee, I'm just looking for clarification in terms of when items, and I'm not sure who to forward this to, when items will come to the Finance Committee and when items will be approved in their other various committees and not go through Finance. Through Mr. Chair.
Through the chair.
And I'm looking at.
Sorry, I think our CEO wants to speak.
Yeah, go ahead, Elaine.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sorry I'm not there in person, and Ramesh can jump in if I miss anything. But generally, reports would go to the Finance and Admin Committee where it's material budgetary matters or where there's more than one department involved. And Ramesh, I'm not sure if you want to add anything there, but when it's something specifically to the Works agenda, it would generally come through Works. I will point out, though, that all reports with a financial impact are reviewed by Finance and signed off by Finance before I even receive them.
Through the chair, that is, Elaine is correct. And if you can see, for example, recommendation C, this is already from the approved budget. And if this was not in the budget, like then it would be an F&A matter, such as pre-budget approval and so on.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. We do have a mover and a seconder on this report. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. All right, and let's jump down here again. We are down to other business. Is there any, wow, hands are flying everywhere. I'm going to go with Councilor Mulcahy. Can you hit your button first? Thank you.
Thank you. Very brief. We have a section of road on Thixon Road, south of the 407, that goes 80-60, 80-60 for like a very short stretch. And I'm just looking for some help getting that fixed because there's businesses coming in and out of there, and it just should be 60 all the way through, but I'm not a traffic engineer and I just need some help. So.
Through the chair. Yeah, so basically when we change the speed limit, there are some transition zones and there's a minimum length. And I don't know when is the last time we have looked at it, and I can certainly have traffic look at it again.
Please.
So this is Thixon from 407 south to Taunton?
Yes.
Through Hartco and so on, okay.
Just want some consistency on the road. It's all over the map with speeds. So, and it changes quickly in a very short distance.
Take that as an action item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next we'll go to Mayor Foster. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of bits. Yeah, Mr. Hunt, good to see you here. I imagine that this is more a matter of administration, but following up on Councillor Nicholson's comments with the choices on the committee, while there is a definite value in staff making recommendations, they go through, they can look at the skill sets in a matrix and saves us from individually doing a huge amount of work. Does it perhaps make sense for at least members of committee on a confidential basis to see those CVs? So I know that that's how we do it in Clarington. Generally, again, would go along with staff, but at least get to see, and I think the optics may be better. So can I leave that with you? Because that would be broadly across the organization as opposed to just this committee. Ramesh, a question for you. So I thought I heard in response to a question that we always go with the lowest bidder. And I would have assumed that there are a number of scoring factors where the lowest bidder is not necessarily the best bidder. Can you clarify that for me, Pete?
Yeah, through the chair, there's a distinction between consulting assignments and construction tenders. And construction tenders, we always go with the lowest bidder, unless we deem them non-compliant because they didn't meet something, performance bonds and whatever. In the consulting assignments, there's a technical score, price score, and we have a weight of 60 to 70%, for example, for technical, maybe 30 to 40 for price, depending on the specialty of the assignment.
Okay, I'm sorry. I've only had 2 cups of coffee today. So it is not necessary. I heard the lowest price, but there is a scoring mechanism in place that takes price as well as technical.
For consulting assignments, again, a construction tender, for example, Regional Road 57, when it's ready for widening, we issue the tender, basically the lowest bidder, unless they're not complying with some of our requirements.
Okay, so let's look, aside from the sole sourcing, at equipment itself, which can be almost anything. And I go back, I forget which astronaut it was, was asked about going to the moon and said, I'm in a machine going at 300,000 miles an hour that's made of 1,000 pieces that was given to the lowest bidder on that. It's not a direct quote, but it gets the story across. And I'm asking this because it gives us latitude if we do things differently in terms of where we find best value instead of best price. Do we need to revisit that?
Well, when we know that a certain project is complicated, we specifically do a pre-qualification. For example, Highway 2 BRT, we did a number of projects. We knew it was a complex project, like, the corridor. We did a pre-qualification. Based on that, we screened out some of the contractors. And then it's only those who got qualified who got to bid on it, and the lowest of those got it. And we've done that for consulting assignments. Consulting assignments, usually they are based on price and technical. But when it comes to contracts, it's really the unit prices for asphalt and concrete and whatever, and it adds up, and to the lump sum price, the lowest bidder.
Okay, we'll have a chat. I have some thoughts on that we don't need to spend a bunch of time here. And last week, on the sole source, we got a little bit into the trade situation that we find. I wonder if there's some value in speaking shortly to that. The tariffs, of course, that would impact our costs would be set by the federal government here. We do have an ability to go to the government and suggest that if we impose counter tariffs that are costing significant amounts of money on other levels of government, we may have an opinion on that. And I appreciate how delicate it is. We are all in this together, or not necessarily in this, but we need to understand that the Canadian government will set the tariffs that cost us money. And we do have an ability to possibly change that. But on and Mr. Hunt, while there are trade agreements, and you might connect my comments, the question that I just asked on the lower bidder with the questions here, I would look to how a subcontractor on the nuclear industry, how it can work or not work. Unfortunately, with OPG, not necessarily work. where there can be restrictions in terms of who you buy from. So in our case, we have restrictions, but can we not look at the subs and require that the subs have a certain percentage of where it's appropriate, because I know it's hard, Canadian content or local content. And even if we can't make that requirement, so Bruce Power, for example, does that, where we don't have the requirements on the larger projects, is it possible for us to list requirements that may be satisfied locally, that local business would not know about? So we have these large contracts that look huge. My favorite example is ladders. I'll tell you the story another day. It's a humorous story, but and these guys don't want to hear it.
Let me hear it.
Yeah, I'll tell you later. I don't want to waste everyone's time. But can we put a bit of thought towards that? And I'm sure at council there's going to be more discussion on how we promote local, how we promote Canadian, and maybe even for some of these companies that we are doing a lot of business with, how we communicate with those U.S. suppliers, what the impact to their business may be if this trade war erupts. I'll buy the coffee. Do you want to, Carrot? Do you want to have a conversation offline on this, or?
Yeah, I can give a short answer, I think, on the record, and we will certainly, staff at the region, not just in legal, will be prepared to have a fulsome discussion with council about this. Purchasing, and to Ramesh's earlier point, purchasing really is a toolkit. And so we have tenders, we have requests for proposals, which is a broad term that covers, a continuum from competitions that look very much like a tender with a couple variables to something which is really a proposal, which we would do for a big project with a lot of variables and a lot of discretionary decision making as to what is best in terms of quality and cost. So, and there are new tools that we're using and looking at right now, which apply team-based approaches as well as more negotiation in the process. So it really is a toolkit. And when you have new considerations like risk of cost escalation, which is something we've experienced since COVID, and now we've got risk of, we've got dollar fluctuations as well as risks of tariffs. These are, I would say, although they're important considerations, they really are just new considerations, which will impact how we choose the appropriate tools. And our experts in purchasing could probably answer this much better than I could. But they are certainly working right now with the client departments such as Works to readjust our toolkit so that now we've got the appropriate processes to deal with this. And many of the things that people have raised, that you've raised, Mayor Foster, are new considerations that will find their way into our toolkit regardless. As well, we may receive direction from the province or from this body to adjust how we move forward. So, local considerations is something that we're looking at in terms of attracting more small and medium-sized business and making sure that some of our purchasing is more open to those types of businesses, which, although they're small and medium-sized, also maybe happen to be local. So,
Mr. Hunt, I'm shocked and dismayed that I did not give you a eureka moment. That your professional staff are all over this. But I do thank you for it. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Hey, thank you very much. Okay, next is Chair Henry. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Chair. I'll give you a motion to waive the rules to add a motion.
Perfect. So, seconded by Tito. All in favor of waiving the rules? That's carried. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
So I appreciate some help with the wording, but when there's a project of significant value and the commissioner feels that a tour of a site may benefit this committee, that tour be arranged.
Seconded. Any questions or comments on that? I agree 100% myself. Okay, would we permit Councillor McDougall? My recommendation would be no, but it's up to you, Chair.
Well, he's my outside consultant, absolutely.
Okay, fair enough. You're allowed to come. All right, so all in favor of the motion? That's carried. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. Okay, anything else to add, sir?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Next, we've got Councillor Lee. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair. My issue, so to speak, has to deal with My Durham 311 and trash collection. So Peter Vega's been wonderful dealing with all my complaints and all my kind of issues addressed. But the fact of the matter is my ward, my specific ward, we do trash collections on Friday. And if there's any sort of problem, whether the trash wasn't picked up properly or anything, it does require me to email or call Peter directly to rectify it. If a customer were to try to call My Durham 311 on a Friday night or a Saturday, it looks like we don't have them fully staffed. I don't think we have 24/7 operation quite yet. So that really does impede my residents' ability to, follow through the natural process of issuing a kind of a complaint or an issue. So when is that going to be resolved? Do we have any sort of timeline of when we can get Durham 311 at a 24/7 or at least a 6-day operation to help those with Friday collection?
Okay, so we're going to start with Ramesh, and then Elaine, I think, might jump in. Go ahead.
If I may,
Sure.
Elaine, yeah, so Durham 311 is weekdays only, but we do have a 24/7 customer service. After hours, they do get forwarded to our external vendor. So unless the example that I'm hearing from you, Councillor Lee, is specific to a resident, somehow the handover didn't happen, it should be 24/7. Like Peter Vega and others are always available during weekdays, but like 311 in its current form is not 24/7, but the service is 24/7. And perhaps Elaine can add, we are quite anxious to expand 311 to 24/7 given the excellent customer service they provide. Elaine might have a timing on the crystal ball on when that might happen. Thank you.
I don't actually have a crystal ball. We would love it to be 24/7. It's frankly a financial issue. So each year in the budget, we do try to expand it. It's also a collective bargaining issue. So the need to expand it does have to go through our collective bargaining process, and the Corporate Services Department is working on that. But I will try to get a better sense for you, Councillor, in terms of how long it would likely take for us to get to that. But again, just a reminder, it is a financial pressure. And in this year's budget, we were not able to put that forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for the question, Councillor Lee. I think we are down to our next meeting is March the 5th at 9:30. And probably a motion to adjourn. Moved by the chair, seconded by Councillor Mulcahy. All in favor? You looking for a recorded vote, Mayor Foster? All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.